California, everybody calls you Nada. So can you Mary Jones? There's so many things there. So I just want to introduce really quickly. I think most of you know who is on the panel, but I wanted to give you their background a little bit because it's very impressive. So first, we'll start with Dina Alvarez, the furthest Dina away from me, and she started her writing career as a freelancer for a parenting publication in New York, covering education, local politics, and lifestyle. She later co-founded, and I think I'm going to say this right, Somos Padres, that's okay, the first and only bilingual parenting publication for Hispanic families in New York City. It's very impressive. Dina is an avid reader and lover of anthologies, hence the book, particularly those that tell women's stories. She's the mother of 2 sons and a native New Yorker. She continues to call the city home where she lives with her family. Dina Aronson, the next Dina in, thank goodness your name is not Dina, is passionate about shining a light on midlife women and reframing the cultural conversation around aging. Again, hence the book. She began her career as an attorney later founding a legal search firm, but pivoted as she approached midlife and couldn't find relevant content that reflected her experience, which I think a lot of us, that's exactly what happens, right? We find ourselves in midlife and we're like, ooh, I actually have more questions than answers. And then from that, we listen to Sarah's podcast and we move on. She began freelancing for startups aimed at the 40 and above women and founded the Patina blog, such a good name, which is now a Substack newsletter called Patina with Dina Aronson, where she explores topics in and around aging through the midlife lens. She has 2 grown stepsons and currently resides between New York and Miami with her husband. And then the non-Dina in the group, Dr. Sarah Milken, is the creator and host of the podcast, The Flexible Neurotic. Again, another fantastic name. These guys could go into copywriting. Where she and her female listeners explore reinventing themselves in the second half of life together. And I love that you put that in your bio, that it's like this kind of group effort. Which, again, it lends itself to the book as well. Sarah is inspiring midlife women to focus on themselves and to dig deep. If you guys have ever paid attention to her show or even her Instagram, she's got the golden shit shovel that it's metaphor. But actually, she actually has one. To uncover new possibilities in their lives. Sarah has amassed thousands of Instagram followers and has created a dedicated and engaged community with her podcast that ranks #1, which we know there's a million podcasts out there. So to rank in the 1%, is no small feat. Sarah graduated with honors from the University of Pennsylvania with a BA in communications and went on to receive her PhD in educational psychology from USC, after which she taught in the Graduate School of Education, also at USC. She has served on several philanthropic boards as well as a board of a local private school here in LA. And after taking time off to raise her 2 children, now teens, one in college, decades. One in college, let me see if I can get this right. One is a rising junior.
No, she's going into
a rising junior in college.
No, she's going to
college.
No,
your son.
Oh, he's a junior. Yeah.
Rising junior.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Yeah. He's a rising junior in college, and then your daughter is a just graduated and is a rising freshman and going to Vandy.
Yes.
See, I'm paying attention.
You are.
And after this, getting these kids off, she realized that she needed to figure out what to do with herself and to recreate and capitalize on her strengths, hence this podcast. Sarah and her husband Jeremy live in the Palisades, and they're currently almost whole, we just established, empty nesters. And their son is also going to University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, my daughter's the renegade.
Yeah, she's the renegade, which is okay. It's good, like the Dinas. It's good to have a renegade in the room. So I'm going to go a little bit back and forth. To give you guys context, we'll ask the Dinas kind of why.
But tell us about you.
Oh,
yeah.
So
You're
nice.
Just as relevant.
I am relevant. I am relevant.
Midlife person.
My name is Netta Jones. Like I said, I have a company called Liberty Road, and we do an annual event here in LA that focuses on women in midlife, and we cover sort of a holistic group or a holistic series of conversations. We have workshops, experts, everything from empty nest sort of issues and sandwich generation issues to what next, what career step or misstep have I taken or would like to take, and then also things around menopause, perimenopause, all those things. So I'm not the expert. I just sort of knowledge broker. I bring all the experts into the room.
Pretty expert though.
And then I also have a podcast, thank you, by the same name, Liberty Road. And that focuses more on women's stories who've started something in midlife. So a lot of entrepreneurial stories and women who've perhaps gone back to work after a big gap to raise children or whatever. And then we also have a membership, and you can go to liberty-road.com and learn more about that. I won't bore you here because this is about these three right now. But thank you for that. So first, let's just start with the Dinas. You guys, aside from your name, your first and your last initial, and I learned their maiden initial as well. Your friendship and creative partnership is sort of emblematic of what you're trying to do here, the community that you're amassing, the message that you have. Tell us a little bit about how you guys came together and decided to do put the book together.
Sure. I love that our sort of origin story really is so reflective of the spirit of this book. So Dina and I met on what Dina refers to as a friendship blind date.
A midlife
Friendship blind date. And we knew basically nothing about each other, but we just showed up and we said.
Was it from social media?
Yes,
it
was from social media, which, we both kind of ventured into right around the same time. But we showed up and we said yes, and although she almost didn't, and she'll probably tell you about that. And that yes, and like the million yeses after that really did lead to this book. Despite the fact though that we had no background in publishing, we had no experience in publishing, we didn't really know where to start, but we decided that we were gonna venture in. We didn't know any of the women who wrote for us at the time either. But I think what we did have was curiosity. I think we both also had this shared sense that midlife stories, like our stories, were being overlooked or where they were being told weren't really representative of our experiences, of the experiences of the women we knew. And we also just were willing to sort of be vulnerable with each other and with the women that we reached out to, and we were willing to sort of lean into what we didn't know. And so I think that our story really is the message of the book, right? That it's never too late, you're not too old, you don't have to have all the answers to start something new. We certainly didn't. And that when you say yes and allow yourself to sort of just lean into what you don't know, come out of the comfort zone, that your life can really expand in ways that you may never have imagined.
Yeah. Dina, can I just ask just to build on that? So when you guys got together, it was a social media connection. Did you start the conversation with let's write a book together, or did in the conversation you end up saying we should really put some put some words to this?
I'll give a little backstory detail, which is that I am an introvert, and you'll understand why I'm saying this a little bit later. But I reached out to someone on social media that I had never met, someone who I admired, and I said, would you like to come for coffee? Very out of my comfort zone. I was just having a midlife moment where I felt that I wanted some connection. She said yes. A few days later, she says, by the way, I'm inviting another friend. And she's inviting another friend, and her name is Tina. And so that's how we kind of met on that. And she had mentioned an idea for a book. I had an idea for a book. We got to know each other over the course of about a year and a half. And then we kind of took both ideas and we kind of blended them together. And we thought, since we're midlife women and we have our own stories and we have our own curiosities, why not put together an anthology that brings together all the stories under an umbrella of the themes that we are facing ourselves and trying to learn from other women how they manage it through the course of their life. So it kind of unfolded
Organically.
Through the course of time.
Yeah.
Over the course of time.
I ask because I think it's important as we all consider how did that happen and how can we make that happen, that we get a little bit more of the story.
Yeah, so the moral too is you say yes and you don't cancel, because I almost canceled.
And we don't cancel.
I just want to just add a very quick little tidbit of serendipity, which is we had this dinner, we really did connect pretty instantly. I mean, and the other women were lovely, but we just had this thing.
Yeah.
And we were following each other great, but we both are in New York City, and 2 or 3 days after this dinner, we ran into each other on the street of New York City, which there's a lot of people there, so that was pretty unlikely. So that kind of, I don't know, just felt very serendipitous and very meant.
We're supposed to do something together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. Thank you for that. I'm going to go back to you, Dina, really quickly. How did you guys decide? Because how many have read it? Just no shame. I'm curious. Okay. So me too. So when you read it, you'll see that these stories span kind of the gamut within the midlife space. And so I was curious, like, how did you guys decide what's going to get included? What chapters are going to get included, and what do we want to cover? What do we want to make sure we're covering in all of this?
So for that, I will tell you that falls under, we ended up putting together the book we wanted to read. Right, we're all going through maybe empty nest, or if we don't have children, we're thinking about who's going to take care of us when we're older. We're thinking about reinventing ourselves. There's menopause, there's sexual pleasure, there's all these themes that we wanted to understand how other women were dealing. And so we just kind of pulled that list together. Like, what do you think? I mean, there's one chapter I wish we would have put in, which is caring for elderly parents, because so many of us are really struggling with that, and it's so hard. And unfortunately, we couldn't find writers because they're caring for elderly parents and they don't have the time to actually do it. But hopefully in the future, if we do another book, that's a really important topic.
And you guys hit elderly parents quite a bit in the book. Like at the very end of your story, you touch on something with your mom. Obviously, your story touches on it. So you've kind of created a way for book
To
number
get
2.
in there.
Yeah. Okay, now to you, Missy.
Yeah.
So one of the things you write about in the book, but you also refer to quite a bit in your podcast and on social, is the midlife itchies. And it was something that you, I think, yourself were feeling, but it's something that you kind of invite us into considering when we listen to you, like, what is this? And, oh yeah, I think that is what I have. And then you kind of open the doors for us to discover what that means and what we can do about it. Can you explain what it is?
I think for me, I was 45 years old. I had chosen to be a stay-at-home mom, even though that wasn't my original plan. And I think I had my 45th birthday, and my husband was popping all the balloons because he has to pop the balloons exactly when the party's over. My friends here know that because he's OCD. And everything was quiet, and I just thought to myself, God, I feel so itchy, but it wasn't like yeast infection itchy. It wasn't like rash itchy. Yeah, it was. Is that I already solved with that estrogen? But it was a soulful, restless itchy. It was like, what the fuck now?
Yeah.
My son was 16. My daughter was 14. They obviously didn't need me as much anymore. As much as I wanted to micromanage them, they were ignoring me. And I just really felt this kind of soulful itch of like, I've got to do something that's outside of my husband, outside of my kids, that's just for me. And I don't know what that is, but I have to scratch this itch. And it's a longer story, but I had this idea for a podcast, and then COVID hit, and I thought, oh my God, like, how am I going to start a podcast in COVID? But I did anyway, and I scratched the itch. But here I am now, 4 years later. I've taken a pause from my podcast for the past few months since my daughter was applying to college. And if you have a daughter, having a daughter is a big thing.
Yes.
Especially a teenage daughter. So that's been a lot this year. But now she's off to college in 2 weeks. And I really feel like I'm kind of sort of in the same position of like, I have my podcast, I have my Instagram following. Am I going to go back to the podcast? Am I going to do an iteration of it? Am I going to do something totally different? So that's kind of exciting too, is that I'm in this new itchy spot of like, how am I going to do another little micro pivot here?
Yeah, it's cool that thank you for being vulnerable about that, like taking a pause and I'm itchy again. It's cool to be in a place in life, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but where you can say, I'm going to pause, it's okay. I'm going to come back to it, it's okay. I don't feel like we had that muscle in our 20s. Would you agree?
Oh, I was like nonstop. Like it's like I went to an Ivy League school, and then I got a PhD, and then I got married, and I had a kid. It was like I checked so many performative boxes that I think by this time in life, I think that we've all earned that kind of curvy linear progression of like, it's a little messy. Okay, here we go. It's a little messy. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I used to not be okay with that, but I am now because as I've learned, it's just kind of the ebbs and flows of, especially midlife energy. Like some days I want to run a fucking marathon. I mean, not really, but sort of. And then, but other days I'm like, I just want a vagina brownie. Like I just want to stay in bed and I don't want to have sex. I just want to be there and eat chocolate and do nothing. And that's okay too. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, all my friends I could call and say that too, you know, but it's true. It's like some days I'm like, I took my testosterone, my pimple cured itself from last week, I'm good. And then other days it's just,
It's a lot.
yeah, it's a lot.
But I wanted to note that the okayness of coming in and out, and I think
wasn't
that's
always
something
like that.
notable that in this season of life. Okay, back to the Dinas, and let's start with Dina Aronson. What was your transition into midlife, and how did it fuel this particular project?
My transition to midlife really informed so much about my pivot. So I had been a lawyer, and then I spent a lot of time, like, I don't know, I lost count, but maybe it was 15 years, owning a legal recruiting business. And as I was moving into my 40s, I just started to feel very off. I'm 56, so I'm like 42, 43, and I don't know what perimenopause is. My female doctor doesn't tell me that this is a thing that exists. Okay, so I'm just like, I ended up in an emergency room for heart palpitations. Like, I started to dry from the inside out. Like, I just, so in that way, I was feeling very off and not myself. But sort of paradoxically, like in another way, as I was moving through my 40s, I was like starting to really feel more like myself. I was feeling more confident. I more comfortable in my skin. Like I could connect dots that I couldn't when I was younger. So I couldn't find any contact that reflected what was going on in my life, as you read in my bio. And I decided that I had always loved to write. And at the same time, I was really craving community around this because I had friends, but nobody was really talking about it. So I decided that I wanted to like do something and create a space to explore all of these things. So in 2020, after like I was preparing, but really I was just scared. I launched my blog. The original one was Patina, and this book is really directly an extension of that and the community around it. But I will tell you, and if you read the book, you'll read my essay. I would say the thing that really propelled me specifically around this book was losing my mom, which I wrote about in the book, because when she died, if she had lived, my life would have been taken care of her. And so when she died and we were extremely close, I felt like I wanted to use the space that she left me to create something that would honor her, that would be meaningful, and that would help other women. And so that really for me was you have to do this moment.
What a beautiful reframe of such a devastating
I don't want to cry. But
yeah.
Dina is actually wearing a bracelet that my mother made, and but that really was like, I think that's one of those things in midlife. I mean, we don't talk about dying and death, and I felt really compelled to write about it because it was such a motivating factor for me. So.
Thank you for being vulnerable and writing that part of your story. Dina, how about you? What do you think it was that you were so passionate about that propelled you to take this on with Dina?
So I feel like I have an interesting midlife story in that it's probably very different than most people expect. Like I feel like I'm living my life in reverse. Mm-hmm. I wrote the essay, it's titled The Not So Invisible Woman, because I felt very invisible in the early part of my life because I've always been such an introvert and I've always been so quiet. I liked other people to have the spotlight, and I really would step away from any kind of putting myself out there. So when I was 53 and it was during the pandemic, I did what every introvert should do. I actually put my first picture on social media ever, and I started microblogging. And I got a lot of support from women from the stories that I was telling. And I suddenly had this like mini community that was really wonderful to have and made me feel good about myself. And I always loved anthologies, and I had an idea for a different anthology that centered around our mothers. And when I started stepping back to look at these women that were supporting me, I was so blown away by them. They were starting podcasts. They were, writing books. They were starting jewelry businesses. And I thought, they're not having a midlife crisis. They're having a midlife renaissance. Like, this is a real shift. They're not fading away. They're not getting any smaller. And so Dina and I were already talking about the book. And so my transition was just kind of coming out of the shadows and then feeling comfortable in my skin, putting myself out there, letting the introvert kind of get pushed to the side a little bit. She's not gone completely.
Yeah.
She comes out a lot,
But in the book, you talk about her coming out because you choose to have her come
yes,
out.
I
versus
wear the
other
invisibility
people.
cloak when
Yeah.
I want to now.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not forced upon me based on fear or just feeling, shy or not wanting to put myself out there. So my midlife pivot was really a very unusual one, I feel. I don't think that's a very common thing to do, to be an introvert all your life and then suddenly, you decide you want to write a book and you want to be speaking to women about themes, and it was just a very, very big shift for me, and I'm so glad because I really needed to step out of the comfort zone, like I needed to move forward.
That story in particular, I think, is helpful for all of us who are reading it to see different ways of whether it's a shit shovel or whether it's death, and we'll go back to your origin story on that, but or the death of a loved one, your mother in this case, or just wanting to see yourself come to life. It's really interesting how your stories help us to see our stories in this. Like, oh, what is that for me? How do I then realize what's next for me, given what I've heard from the Dinas and Sarah, and all the other stories that you guys share in the book. So those are the things that will continue to build the community and give life into what you guys have started. Let me go really quickly back to Sarah, because you talked about the itchies, but you didn't talk, and you talked about your 45th birthday and your neurotic husband who popped off the lid, or your OCD, you're the neurotic one. But you didn't talk, or you didn't tell the story about what inspired it. So your daughter, who, while you took a break to focus on her with the podcast, she was really worth it because she's a gem. She, as a gift for Sarah's birthday, oh my gosh, hi Mimi. She, as a gift for Sarah's birthday, had her friends put together, and you guys, it looks like some of your friends, so maybe some of your know the story. Put together, you're going to tell the story, but a jar of words, essentially, something like that. And so take the story from there.
No, so my daughter, I guess she was very into Pinterest at the time. She no longer is. Because otherwise she'd be doing her own dorm room and I wouldn't be doing it. Somehow now she doesn't care what anything looks like because
okay.
it's her
Thanks.
job. Yeah.
Yeah. Until she asks.
Yeah,
for
until
money.
we get to Nashville and
Yeah.
everything's sold out. Yeah. And I picked all the wrong things.
Totally.
Yeah.
Thanks for nothing.
Yeah. Okay. But no, so my daughter gave me a golden box for my birthday, and it was wrapped with gold paper. And I guess she'd asked a lot of my friends to write these little inscriptions, like, what do you think about my mom? So she gave me this gift, and she's really not like a huge, like, make a gift person. So it was kind of like a big deal for her to go through this whole extravaganza of like reaching out to all of my friends and collecting it, printing it, and all the things, and really thoughtful. And that's before she got me. You know, that like 14 to 16.
You got her.
Yeah.
You turned 45.
16, yeah. 16 was like, okay, I have an attitude. We made it to 16.
Mine's 22 and she's coming back. So.
Oh, okay, good. Well, my son, I mean, I feel like boys are just like
They're
always
easier.
nicer.
Yeah.
So, don't tell him.
Yeah. Okay.
I told him he didn't have to come.
That's good.
Yeah, because he was like, but so the box. So when I opened the box and I read all the cards, I thought, oh my God, there's like a theme here. I'm a curator, I'm a researcher, my pretty nerd friend, the friend that I call for everything, the friend who always has the answers. And I thought, God, I never really like thought of my skill set like that until I saw it so many times. But then I thought, okay, well, but what do you do with that? Like, am I a librarian? Like, am I an encyclopedia? Like, what am I?
Yeah.
And so I just thought, okay, well, I'm an information curator, researcher, like you said about yourself. I'm going to start a podcast. And I did. And I started a social media account, and I had never even been on Facebook. And I did all those things that, like Dina said, that I never thought I would do, that I always said I would never do, or I couldn't do, or I was scared to do. And I just got naked and I did it.
Yeah.
And there it was.
I feel like that's a theme in every one of the stories, right? So at some point, somebody just started. and I spared you guys the background, but I was a female founding consultant for many years. I worked with female founders to start their startups in the very, very early stages. And one of the things that's the kind of the piece of advice is stop getting in your head or get out of your head and just start, whatever it is. You're going to screw up, like guaranteed, but you just have to start. And taking on a podcast when you have no, I assume you had no sound technical
It was my husband.
information. Yeah, you figure it out.
Yeah.
You figure it out, but you just have to start. So I love that story about your daughter, and what a cool way, whether it's your daughter in a gold box or just asking your friends, right? Like, what do you see in me that I could capitalize on? What do you see that I don't see? Because I think we can get in our heads and not be objective about what we have to offer the world. Okay, back to, let's see, Dina Aronson. Midlife is finally starting to kind of make its way into the zeitgeist, but there's still so much to talk about. How do you think this book is going to change that, and what? I'll start it.
Yeah, I mean, when we were putting this together, one of the thoughts was, mercifully, we were finally talking about menopause. Like, seriously, because I talked about how I was in an emergency room 10 years earlier. But there was still so much that we weren't talking about. There's all these other things. I mean, I was sitting in Miami with a group of girlfriends, and we were talking, as one does, about dry vaginas.
Yeah.
And there was a woman sitting next to us alone, and she came over to our table and was like, can I sit with you guys? So there's just so much still that we don't talk about. And so what I hope is that, having these conversations sort of removes the shame, because there's still so much shame and stigma around age. Which is ridiculous, but it's just the way it is. And so I hope that these stories will help to normalize the conversations and, not only help women to feel seen, which is really one of our primary goals, but that will encourage them to tell their own stories without shame. And, when a lot of women start to talk, and when you have this sort of powerful collective voice, I think that's when cultural shifts start to happen. And so I hope that that's what happens. Look, our subtitle is, stories that'll change the way you think about age. And ultimately, I hope that these stories will change the way that people think about age. And I also hope, that it's not just about us, this cohort here. It's about the younger women coming up behind us. And we sort of talk about this idea of throwing down a ladder to women and showing them by example in these stories that don't be afraid. The air is okay up here. Yes, there's some shit to slog through, but we can do it. And you know what? Life can get really interesting and can expand in ways, as I said before, that you might never have imagined. So.
Well, we didn't have a generation before us, or we have very few stories before us of women who were reinventing themselves at this age, or who were taking on this time in life to really think about what's possible. I feel like there's a documentary about the three that did, right? Versus no, this is normal.
Yeah.
This is what we do. This is an opportunity to reach for something else. We're wiser. We have more context. We have more content. We know more people, contacts. There's all kinds of C's here. And there's so much that we have going on. Why don't we kind of go for it at this stage?
Yeah.
Okay, Dina Alvarez, this is for you. The midlife experience is very broad, and the essays feel like they're open conversations that speak to the complexity and texture of this time. What were some of the common themes that emerged in the book, and did any take you by surprise? So I have to believe that you guys were reading together as things were coming in, and we had no idea. We thought this was the direction we were going to go, but there seems to be more of this that people are talking about or want to express.
I think what I felt in every essay was that there was always an identity shift. Every woman writing was going through that moment of asking herself, what next? What am I doing here? Where am I going? How can I make this better? There's also that sense of forgiveness in some of the essays where women kind of look back over their lives and say, yeah, maybe it wasn't perfect, maybe I didn't make the right choices, but I'm here now and I can change now and I can be better now. And I was also really surprised at the end of the book when we were writing the afterword that so many women referenced the pandemic as a time where they were able to shut down for a minute and look inside and think about things on. I know it was a terrible, terrible time. And I do believe somehow this moment for these women was a little bit of a silver lining for them. Like it really gave them a moment, like the world had shut down and it gave them a moment to shut down and step back. And I really didn't see that coming. And it wasn't until the end of the book that we were sitting together writing the afterword and we're like, wait a minute, there's like 8 women or 10 women who referenced the pandemic being this time of a shift for them. So that I found that very interesting.
I would say, and I'm curious if you found this, I would say the same in the podcast. As I interview people, oftentimes it's sort of they're like, well, it's cliche, but the pandemic, blah, 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 blah,
But
blah.
it's true, because
Yeah.
you just have more time.
Yeah, you found the same as you were interviewing.
And I also started my podcast.
Yes,
Like,
that is your story.
that is my story.
Yeah,
But I think just that time, because you're always running, and
Yeah.
we had nowhere to run but within our own home. So
Yeah.
you almost had nothing but time. Maybe unless you had little kids, and my kids were on the teenage side, so I wasn't teaching them school. But thank God.
yeah,
Otherwise, we'd be having a whole different story. I'd probably be.
yeah. I also found the pandemic to complicate things in a way because I didn't know that I'll just talk about like peri and menopause. I didn't know that some of what I was experiencing was hormonal. I thought it was circumstantial.
Yeah.
I thought it was like, I am bored, my people, my family are gonna drive me crazy. I don't think I knew all that was happening. So it's interesting how it was a silver lining. That's my story as well. But that it also created some other like weird complications. And then thank the Lord, like we started to hear more and more about menopause and perimenopause. I also find it interesting that none of us, all of us talk about menopause and perimenopause, but none of us are experts in that space, which is, I think, to some degree, we can thank we're writing the coattails of some of that. Like now, all of us are talking about kind of the more than hormones, or we're not just our hormones, but we include that. And that's the first time I think I've been part of a panel that doesn't have somebody who's strictly talking about that. So this is the next wave, right? This is what's happening next, is talking about, okay, let's get your hormones in check, but then what is it now that those are in check? What is it that we have to offer, and what is it that we have to do now? Okay, Sarah, you talked a little bit about your platform specific to the podcast and taking a pause, but talk to us a little bit about why you think there's been kind of so much energy around, I'll just say your platform, and that means both the podcast and her Instagram, because both are strong. But do you think it's your sort of unfiltered, unapologetic or approach that's created this community and so much interest? Do you think it's just a demand for content? What do you think it is that has really...
I mean, my kids would say it's TMI.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But
I think that's your secret sauce.
yeah, I think that, I mean, from all the messages I've gotten and the feedback over the last 4 years, I think like the simplest theme is that it's sort of like a relatability.
Yeah.
It's like she kind of has her shit together, but then she doesn't. And then she has her shit together, but then she's honest that she feels like shit.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that a lot of women, although we think there are so many midlife women going through this journey, there's still this sense of being alone.
Yeah.
And I think that when you go onto Instagram and you see someone who's like, oh my God, like all my hair is falling out and it's like all over their hand or whatever, or like I feel like I want to eat a donut and all these things, or like my husband's breathing is bothering me.
Or chewing.
Yeah, he's chewing and like he's wearing a retainer and like, oh my God, and like we're both going to bed and it's like 97 steps of the bedtime routine. That's hot, all these things. And I think when you see people online kind of doing it in a very honest, relatable way, and like there's funny, but I'm not like dancing around and like doing memes and all this kind of stuff. It's more just like sharing kind of like everyday life, making fun of my kids making fun of me. And I just think that the kind of sheer relatability factor of like, oh, she's sort of similar to me, and like she's going and doing the dumb and necessary weights, and like she's going to the gym, and like she's eating chicken sausage for breakfast every fucking morning. You know, I've taken a break this week though because I hit the wall. Yeah.
But are you still packing with those insane amounts of like supplements and
Yes.
things? I'm like, I need a list. I don't know what is happening.
That's like an ongoing drama.
Yeah, well, there's
I
your
know,
next project.
but yeah.
Wasn't one of the things frustrated pharmacists did?
Yeah. I mean, you saw the dinner last night. But I think I was turning 50 this year, and like my friends will tell you, like I just felt like it was this point in my life where I thought, like, okay, I can put my feelers out there. I can get my Pronovo done, which is the full body scan. I did like all my blood work. I've done my hormones. I had the gallery can. Like I literally, and I made my husband do everything too. We literally went through every single thing just to kind of get that like midlife baseline. And once I got all of my information in order, then I just felt like, okay, now I can complain about everything else. I'm okay. I'm good.
Okay, I'm not recommending you start a Substack.
Yes, no.
But I am, and we love Substack. I'm not saying, but I do think there's a real opportunity there because there's something about the way you approach everything that's both aspirational and approachable. And so if I'm listening and your snark is like it's something I relate to, so it's funny and all of that, but I want to know the supplements. I want to know the list of things that you and your husband did. So like, we'll all pay for it. Just
Ask my
make
friends.
the list. Okay, then it's a group. Yeah, it's a group. You guys can learn from the Dinas.
It's a long list.
No, but it's really helpful. I mean, I've had a few conversations earlier with some people, and it's like, what do you know? Who do you know? People just need to be sharing that information. And it's health and wellness and so many other things.
I just have to figure out a way to repackage it.
Yeah.
So it's not just me on Instagram talking away.
I get it.
You know,
Yeah.
so that's kind of what I'm thinking about right now is sort of, is it a Substack? Is it, some kind of membership? Because people don't realize how much time and money goes into all of this. It's not just like,
No.
you wake up and it's there. Like a podcast requires, editing and music and all the things, and it's not free.
Yeah.
And I love being like a free resource, but at a certain point, like it's like, okay, how am I going to make this make sense? And I know you can relate to that because now you have, something that you've monetized. But for me, for all this time, it's been like free content, So for me, it's rethinking how I put out information.
Yeah. But I think what's important is it's not the don't do it because you don't know how to monetize it. It's do it and then figure out.
Right.
Sarah has figured out, okay, this is what I have to offer. And then it's that next sort of layer. So before we get to questions, I just have another question really quickly. The core message of the book, and this is to both the Dinas, what do you think you're hoping to accomplish by sharing these stories? And Dina Alvarez, I'll start with you.
I think the core message is that you're not alone, that we're all going through this together. None of us is sleeping great and we're all hot. So the book really kind of walks us through all different parts of the lives that we're going through. So I hope that women who read it will hold up a mirror to themselves and be like, what part of this is relatable to me? And maybe learn something from it, or maybe open up conversations. And I want women to feel that life does not narrow at this point. We're not fading. We have a lot to offer. We are storytellers and we should be telling our stories. We should be helping other women and writing or telling our stories in service to other women. So I'd really like it to be like just a well-rounded book that gives them the sense that they really are seen, heard, and understood. And I know Dina feels the same way, and I know she'll answer separately, but that's the goal, for women not to feel alone.
Thank you for writing that in service to all of us. I'll say that in advance. Dina, how about you?
Yeah, and I'll just circle right back to my first question, which is, how is this relationship emblematic, right?
Yeah.
All of the things, you're not too old. It's not too late. You don't have to have all the answers to start something new. we still don't have all the answers, and we have a book sitting on the shelf, right? And we're still sort of working our way through and figuring things out. And so, like Dina said, like this is not a narrowing. There's a real opportunity for expansion when you allow yourself to think differently, when you do say yes to, and because it's really comfortable in that little zone. You don't have to come out, you don't have to see daylight, you got to come out of it if you want to grow. And I think that if we're going to have rich and full lives, we have to keep evolving every day until there's no more breath. And so I want that to be a takeaway from this book, but I also have sort of a loftier goal, which I referred to earlier, which is I want to change the way we think about age, because like as recently as a few weeks ago, I was talking to a woman who was like, I don't say my age. And I'm like, why? And so I really hope that, and I think we're moving in the right direction, but I really hope that this will push us a little bit closer to that goal of like really being comfortable with owning our age and destigmatizing this idea of being an older woman. Like, we're fucking fabulous. Like the women I know, I just I'm blown away. I mean, this book, part of the joy of it was getting to know women like Sarah and the other 25 women that wrote with us. I mean, these women are rock stars. And so I want the world to see that. So
that's awesome. Thank you guys. And I'm 57, by the way,
We should all
shout
shout out our ages.
We wanted to take a minute to just open it up to the floor. Any questions that you guys have? Yes.
Haley.
Hi, Greta.
I'm 67. So
Yes.
how did you identify these women who contributed to the book? How did you find them?
Well, a lot of the women, we found Sarah through her flexible neurotic platform, and of course we fell in love with her and her realness.
Instagram.
So a lot of it, I mean, it sounds crazy to say, but a lot of it was community derived from social media. We have Jess sitting here who we met on Instagram. Susan Canoff, your lovely friend who contributed to the book. So there were women, and once we started to sort of cultivate that community, the generosity of spirit of the women that were writing with us was off the charts. Like introductions came, and even when we didn't ask, and so a lot of it just sort of built from sometimes like holding our breath and like sliding into somebody's DMs and saying, hey, and there's a vulnerability required there, because it still feels a little weird to say, hi, I like you. Do you want to be friends? And you risk being rejected. But I think the beauty of being in this stage of life is you're kind of like, okay, it's not personal. Like, you move on. Whereas 10 years ago, I might have like gone to bed for a day because, Gretchen didn't respond to me. So, yeah, it was really very social media driven and community driven that way.
That's great.
Thank you for that.
Thanks,
question.
Gretchen.
Anyone else? Yes.
I'm Maxine, and I got to know Sarah through a couple of, well, actually my husband and I picked her and her daughter up at a lunch. We were sitting at the table
Like a dating pickup? Okay.
We were just sitting next to him and we just intruded and then just started a conversation. So good for husbands who are very forgiving, and
Yes.
he's matched up a lot of my really good
That's
friendships.
awesome.
It's really good. But I've kind of, as you're saying, like panels with doctors, and so like I've deep dived into the medical part and then into the product part. And Sarah and I were texting about like what conversation really needs to be amplified, because I do think it's still a niche group of women who are doing their own deep diving into stuff, and it's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so like what, from your experience and all the stories, like what would be one or two topics that you feel would be the best to amplify, like nationally and globally, or
That's a great
Outside of
question.
menopause and perimenopause.
Outside of menopause? Yeah.
just at this time?
Okay.
Like at this time, what are the topics that would probably be the two that you'd really love for it to just be a mainstream conversation?
I think the topic of beauty, about you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I think we're held to such a high standard. We have to look a certain way, and men. Are there any men here?
Yeah, this is actually the
Men
first time we
are-
have men at our
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we want them in the conversation.
Yes, and men are just treated differently, right? Like they're kind of off the hook, and women, we are hit from all sides, right? So menopause, perimenopause, the kids are leaving, and there's so many things going on, and then we have to worry about like how we are treated in society, how, you know, like I work in a corporate office and I am one of the oldest people there. And it's hard for me because I feel like I have to work to really look my best. And I want to look my best. Like I care. But I feel a lot of the pressure. And so I think that's a conversation that really needs to come out strongly, that, you know, the judgment and even the judgment amongst ourselves too, you know, we are not perfect. So I think for me, I would focus on the beauty. Like, how do we fix this so that we don't feel this kind of pressure? Because it's hard and it's deep and it's unforgiving, and I think it weighs on us a lot.
Yeah, we're also living in this weird time, I think, to add on to that, where there's so much available to us, and
Right. Yes.
in the beauty space, right? And so we don't want to judge those who are doing things and those who are not doing things, but we also, I experienced a situation recently where two friends that are exactly the same age, it was not me, but two friends, and one had spent some time and money paying attention to things she could do to preserve the way she looked, and the other wasn't. And it was interesting how they were both treated, and they were exact same age, and they both made those decisions being really thoughtful about what they wanted. And we need to just honor those decisions and not like, well, she looks like crap and she looks amazing. So that's even complicated, as you know, it's like this world is expanding of what's possible that we can do while we're also asking this beauty question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was
I don't know if you have.
No, I think that's a great answer, and it's funny, there's another contributor to the book, Christine Morrison, who is writing in black and white is her handle, and she recently wrote an article called The Economics of Insecurity, and looking at the numbers and the industries that would essentially bankrupt if we could get to a place of accepting ourselves. And that doesn't mean not tweaking here and there, but like it feels like that's an industry that just plays on every base fear and every insecurity that we have as women. And so I actually think that was a brilliant answer, because I think that is a conversation that should be amplified.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and any conversation around ageism too. I mean, like, you know, I think through these stories of reinvention, of shifting identities, you know, you see the resilience, the capacity to start to be vital, to be relevant at every age. And I think that the cultural messaging is still pretty crappy. You know, we're still sort of expected to, I mean, a lot of us in this bubble are thinking differently, but when you go outside of it, you know, there's still a lot of shame, as we talked about earlier. So anything where we can sort of, you know, smash those narratives and the shame and show women that are like kicking ass and doing things and making stuff happen, you know.
So those are, to answer your question, those are themes that they saw in the book. Awesome. Any other questions?
I just want to say something about
Yeah.
that too, because as I was like watching all of you, and I was thinking like it's amazing, like women now in midlife are so much more youthful. Like in so many ways, we take care of ourselves in different ways. There's more permission to be who we are. Like everyone has long hair. I'm like, I mean, when I was born, my grandmother was 50, and like they all look like old ladies.
Yeah.
And went to get their hair set
Yeah.
every week, right? And I think there's a piece too where there's this opportunity to like really celebrate in so many ways how far we've come.
Yeah.
Because yes, there's a ton
Yeah.
more to go, but at the same time, it's like here we are. Like,
Yeah.
like it is incredible how in just 2 generations or whatever, how much we have evolved.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty amazing, and there's a lot of room to go.
But it's a good note, otherwise we'll get weary, right, if we don't stop and celebrate.
Yeah, like my grandmother like had her hair set. It was like,
Yeah.
it was gold, and she was like younger than I am now.
Yeah.
And she was cool. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Isn't that the Golden Girls?
Yeah.
sex
Yeah.
scene?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I'd also like to add, I brought it up to them last night at dinner. You know, I'm sure you guys have seen the woman on TikTok and Instagram, I Do Not Care Club.
Yeah.
Okay. I love her. I
Yeah.
think it's funny. I love it. But at the same time, I do care.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think, but I care what I look like. I care what I feel like. I care how I present to myself. I care how I present to the world and to my family and friends. And so it's again finding that fine line. Like I get Botox, you might not, but I do. But it's like you stay in your lane, I'll stay in my lane. We don't judge each other, just like you said, your two friends, one had a facelift and one didn't, or whatever. But it's like it's okay to care, and it's okay not to care. You know, and wherever you sit in there, great. But like, let's just let it all. And I'm also not ready to like throw in the towel. And I think some women, because of the hormones, because I've been there several days and weeks of my life, especially this year, where you just sort of just say, fuck it. Like, I can't do this anymore. This is so hard. Like, I can't keep up with the Jones. I can't feel normal. I can't feel less tired. But I do want to care. And I also want to show my daughter that I care too.
Yeah.
So.
And I also just want to say, like, to answer the question is, like, women, like longevity for women, right? Because I see all this biohacking with men and like what you should be doing. I'd love to see a little more of that for women. It doesn't have to be biohacking per se, but you know, and we're not just perimenopause and menopause. We had this conversation early on that we did not want this book to be about just menopause. But you know, there's so little money put into women's health in general. So I think if we could have a big conversation about that, I think that's really important because someone said, like, we're not little men. Like, why are they doing all the studies on men? So aside from the beauty, I would say health and longevity, like specifically, like do studies on women for crying out loud. Like, we're here. You know, give us a little space.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Jazz. Unfortunately,
Oh,
not
hi, Jess.
28.
Yes.
I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, that's
I'm
amazing.
inspired because it's always good to know that, like, no matter how old you get, you can still reinvent yourself. So I was curious, what you know now, what you would tell your 20s version of yourself, if there's anything that you would have done differently.
No. Anything I would have done differently? I actually don't think so. But I would say that like opposite from Dina Alvarez, Dina Alvarez, that Dina, I feel like I don't know. I feel like I grew up like in a light, in not hiding. And even though I am an introvert at times because I go and go and go and then I want to stay home and not talk to anyone for 3 days, I feel like I grew up in a house where my mom was a very successful working woman, and she made it okay to take up space. And so I feel like I grew up in a house where it was okay for women to take up space. And my grandmother did too. So it was like 3 generations of taking up space. Whether you worked or you didn't work, it was more of just who you are in terms of your energy. But I think that looking back, the thing I would have said, which I've learned now today, is I would have intentionally been looking at my life in seasons. And I didn't see that until now because I was very judgmental of myself that I chose not to work after going through like a doctoral program and all these things and being a stay-at-home mom. But then looking back on it with midlife eyes, I'm like, okay, there's different seasons for different things. So it was okay for me to be a student. It's okay for me to be just the mom. And now it's okay for me to kind of go back into the workforce. And I think the seasons perspective gives you a lot more freedom and less judgment on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably just tell myself to calm down. I was a worrier. I worried about everything, and I don't know that I would have done anything differently because I actually am really grateful for my mistakes. I feel like they have led me to the place I am now, and I feel like you move through time and space, and everybody makes mistakes, and you learn and you move forward. But I wish that I cared less about what things looked like, about everything having to be perfect, about having to appear like I had my shit together at all times. And I think as women, especially younger women, we feel like we need to have that front. And what I've learned is actually showing people that I don't always have my shit together has allowed me to connect with people in a deeper way. I mean, when you bring your whole self and when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, it's really like a portal to connection. And so I would just tell her to stop worrying and to be open and to show herself, because she was pretty good, you know, but she didn't see herself fully back then. So
That's right, Tina.
I would tell her to travel the world when she's young. I got married at 21. I'm still married. I love my husband. I would do it again, but I wouldn't do it a week shy of my 22nd birthday. and I adore him. He's a great, great, great guy. I just want to put that down on record.
somebody recording this. Oh yeah. She loves it.
Yeah, still do. He's great, but I didn't travel. I didn't see the
Yeah.
world. You know, I checked off all the boxes. You know, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get married and I'm gonna have a house, and then I'm gonna have a job, a house, I'm gonna have kids, and then I'm gonna be that grinder that's like in the background making everything work for everybody else. And I wish that I had taken that my early 20s to travel. And you know, if he loved me, he would have waited for me, right? But
We'll never know.
we'll never yeah, I would say to a young woman, I would say travel.
But you can travel now, you're gonna be empty nest.
There you go.
Yes, but I think when you travel when you're young, it really shapes who you are.
And you're better with jet lag too.
I was yes.
That's the hardest part, I feel
I'm
like.
very jet lagged, and it's only 3
I
hours.
know.
We're hoping that we strung complete sentences together.
You did.
Jazz, I hope you travel.
Any other questions?
It's totally worth it. I did that.
Did
It felt bad that like I didn't, you know, I felt like I was late to the game in a lot of things.
We
And
can't
never
win.
actually got
Well,
there.
everything's a trade-off. I
But,
guess
you know,
is what you're
and it
hearing
was
here.
great, but I do
Yeah.
recommend it.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She's confirmed.
Anyone else? I want to make sure. Writing this beautiful books, of course, and my pleasure. But and I'll just say, you know, and I'm not going to end with this. That would be weird. But Living Road, the reason I added road is because of these stories. Like, it's not a straight path. There are lots of seasons. There are lots of ways to do things. And I think for all of us to think of what's next in this new chapter and this road, what's possible for us, that's a nice thing to be thinking about. Can you guys just end it by saying one thing about what you want us to take away from, you gave the advice to the younger self. What's a piece of advice you can each give to us where we are now? Just really quickly.
Wait, I'm not ready for that.
Yeah.
Piece of advice I would give women now, where they are now.
Yeah. What have you learned in this season?
Don't be
of
afraid
leadership?
to invite somebody out to dinner that you don't know.
There you go. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I would say don't be afraid to be a midlife beginner, because you're not a beginner really ever at this stage. And just because you haven't done the particular thing that you want to try, you bring all of the past skills and views, all of your versions come. So you're not really a beginner. And I think so many people feel daunted, like, about starting a podcast, about writing a book. We didn't know what the hell to do or how to start. But right, you could be a bad beginner, but I've used this quote many times as I've been talking about this book, which is I'm going to say his name wrong, but Lao Tzu, who says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You just have to start taking those little steps and you'll figure it out. So don't let the overwhelm stop you. Get out of your head, start taking those steps.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think I'd say that from this 4-year journey that I've been on, my bottom line would be that midlife is hard and good. And things that are inherently hard are good, and things that are good are hard. You know, being a parent's hard, being a beginner's hard, but they're all good things.
Yeah.
And I would also say don't throw in the towel.
Yeah.
Because hormonally, there's so many times where you want to, because you're just done.
That's great, right? That's a good round. Thank you to Zibby's for
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
And books for sale, I'll get you some markers. if anyone wants to
Amazing.
sign. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Jessica.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for coming,